What's up, everyone? Welcome to Monday and welcome into the NBA Strategy Show as we get you ready for a big old slate tonight with Greg Ehrenberg. He is Tinder Lake. I am Adam Kaufman. Thank you for being with us. This should be a good amount of fun. You know, Greg said right off the hop. So, all right, 10 games. We got about 3 minutes to talk about each team. That's an hour. We're out. I'm going to screw up his math right off the hop by just talking about something completely different. And then we're going to have to go even less. Get involved, by the way, in the Awesemo Premium Slack channel and the YouTube chat. We will acknowledge and answer any and all questions that we can, obviously, over the course of the next hour. But my question to start things off there, Greg, is were you able to keep up with all things NBA yesterday in the face of all that football going on? Are you focused? Are you ready?
Well, so I wasn't able to keep with NBA, but it had nothing to do with football yesterday. I was buying furniture. So I had other stuff to do. I do shows 6 days a week. Sunday is my only off day. By the way, not even by choice, because I was asked which day I wanted to be off. And I said, none of them. Just put me on shows 7 days a week.
Yeah,
and Nolan insisted that I take an off day. Apparently, I don't know, some kind of workforce, like violations. Like, you have to take time off. You're not allowed to just work every day. So all right, I guess give me Sunday then. But yeah, anyway, I had to go get furniture yesterday. So I did not play DFS yesterday.
You know what the trick to working every day is? If you're looking to get around that, you got some weird work ethic for some reason that just commands you to not have any time off. Just do what I do, work for multiple companies. When you do that, no one cares if you work every single day because someone is always, calling upon you for something.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a lot easier if you just generally work. Like, this doesn't, I get to hang out with Kaufman. I don't know, maybe some people enjoy it, maybe some people don't. For me, though, it's like, I just talk about basketball with you for a little while. That's fine. It doesn't feel like work to me.
No, it's the beauty of doing what you love, which fortunately, the two of us, our producer, Jordan, well, I don't know if he's doing what he loves because he has to spend an hour just listening to us and doesn't have the ability to verbally chime in. He has to resort to the chat with News God and everybody else. But, for us, as long as you're doing what you love, you're good, obviously. So as much as I'd love to reflect and downright mope over all things that went on NFL yesterday, this is the NBA Strategy Show, and we do have a lot of games to get to. So get your questions in. And while you're at it, smash that like button on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button as well. It is greatly appreciated. You can be alerted to any and all Awesemo programming that is coming your way. And as you know, here on YouTube, each and every day, a whole boatload of programming comes your way, including a handful of programs today that we'll tell you about a little bit later on. So again, as we make the push to 50,000 subscribers, hit that subscribe button and smash that like button, folks. I'm going to tell you a lot because what can I say? I'm a shill. Some of the top projected performers today, and we'll get to value and all that good stuff a little bit later, Greg, but the big guys on the slate, and there were a bunch of them, and according to our projections from our own Alex Baker here on the Awesemo channel, not only are there a lot of projected good players, a lot of them are projected to be in great spots in terms of returning value, even for their lofty salaries. Among them, you have Nick Jokic, Dame Lillard, Luka Doncic, James Harden, Domantas Sabonis, Mick Vucevic, Joel Embiid, Steph Curry, Bam Adebayo, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, Jason Tatum in his return, by the way, Kyrie Irving. All of these guys are projected, and I know I listed a lot, but they're all projected to have really, really strong nights, especially those first few: Joker, Lillard, Doncic, and Harden. So among this group, this upper tier, who stands out to you most?
Yeah, it's going to be Lillard. He's the player that, as of right now, my initial builds have the most exposure to on the high end. It's still the same situation we've had for the last few games. No CJ McCollum, no Jusuf Nurkic. It's a lot of extra usage going towards Damian Lillard. And the other thing we've seen, too, is when the Trailblazers are in close games right now with all those guys out, they're going to let Lillard play around 40 minutes. So as long as he's getting that many minutes with this amount of usage, it's pretty hard to avoid him. Fairly decent matchup against the Oklahoma City Thunder. It is the tail end of a back-to-back, but not really too concerned because kind of where we're at in the season now with so many teams playing condensed schedules, almost every game seems like a back-to-back for a lot of these teams. So it's going to be a big workload for Lillard again. He's my favorite guy to pay up for.
Why don't we start here going game by game with Philadelphia in Detroit? As we know, obviously the Pistons are not good. They're not good at home. They're not good in general. Philadelphia, quite the opposite. One of the top teams in the East under Doc Rivers to this point. These teams squaring off for the second game in a row. Philly trying to keep a 3-game win streak alive. Starting with the Sixers, who jumps out at you?
Yeah, well, the first thing we have to talk about here is that Joel Embiid, dealing with a back injury, is listed as questionable to play. Mm-hmm. And if he's in, then I don't really think there's anybody we have to target on the Sixers side of the game. There's a lot of guys to pay up for. There's also, this is a 10-game slate. So I bring this up all the time when there's big slates, but there's going to be a lot of value that ends up opening up by the time that we get to lock. So anybody that I look at is just like, oh, this guy's kind of fairly priced. not somebody I'm generally going to have interest in on a 10-game slate because I really want to focus on the players that have pricing value. So if Embiid is in, then I don't really think there's any real need to go out of our way to target Sixers players. If he's out, then Ben Simmons has a bigger role in the offense. We see him with an increased rebound rate. Tobias Harris, a lot of extra usage goes to him if Embiid is out. And then we could also look to Dwight Howard as a really strong value play. It would be a positive matchup against the Pistons. And then also Dwight Howard, just cheap, good points per minute fantasy producer. Probably play somewhere in the neighborhood of like 26 to 28 minutes. So he's starting at center as long as he stays out of foul trouble. That would make him one of the top value plays on the slate if Embiid isn't in. So the real key news item here to look out for is whether Joel Embiid ends up playing or not.
And he is projected for the vicinity of 50 fantasy points tonight, regardless of the slate or site that you are looking at, obviously. But, as you mentioned, Simmons instantly in a better spot if Embiid does not go. On the other side, there's Jeremy Grant is in a very good spot. We can get to that in a moment. But just looking down at value, I think most of it probably comes on the Detroit side as things stand at this moment. If Embiid does not go, just anticipating who does jump out to you in kind of that lower tier, who is it?
Dwight Howard. He would be starting cheap, good points per minute fantasy producer. So he would definitely become one of the top value plays on the slate if Embiid isn't in.
All right. So if you go to the other side then and you look at the Pistons, as mentioned, Jeremy Grant, always in a good spot. DeLon Wright. You also have Josh Jackson. Who are some of these guys that you'd like to roster?
Yeah, so also this is another situation where what happens with Joel Embiid really impacts the Detroit side of the game. Joel Embiid, one of the better defensive players in the league. The Sixers defense over the last handful of years has had a much worse defensive rating when he's off the court. So an easier matchup for the Pistons if Embiid doesn't end up playing. As it stands now, the guy that I like the most is DeLon Wright. I think that he's one of the guys that actually does warrant exposure. Derrick Rose is dealing with a knee injury. He's out and is expected to miss at least a couple more games. So with that being the case, DeLon Wright right now starting for the Pistons also because Killian Hayes is out. He's going to miss the majority of the season with a hip injury. So that's going to put DeLon Wright into a spot where he's going to start at point guard. He's going to soak up most of the minutes. If we look at just what happened last game with him moving into the starting lineup without Derrick Rose there. And by the way, we've seen DeLon Wright start in recent games, but the difference being is that now that Derrick Rose is out, that just means DeLon Wright has to play extra minutes. So last game, we saw 36 minutes out of DeLon Wright. Not all that much usage, but still, when he's on the court for that much, he's a guy who racks up rebounds, assists. So last game, only 10 points on a 14% usage rating, but 7 rebounds and 6 assists. The usage rating probably only goes up from there, but even so, at his price point on both FanDuel and DraftKings, if we could expect him to play, 34, 35 minutes, then I think he's one of the better guard options on the slate. Other guys, Josh Jackson, I have a mild amount of interest in. We've seen his minutes creep up a little bit recently. But really, DeLon Wright is going to be the primary play for me here. Mason Plumlee rates out as a fairly decent points per dollar fantasy play right now, but not somebody I'm going to get to, particularly if Embiid isn't. The reason being is the foul trouble situation. So Plumlee is now fouled out. Just going to bring 4 games in a row. Mason Plumlee's fouled out, and that's really impacted his playing time. Joel Embiid, one of the best big men in the league at drawing fouls. The odds of Mason Plumlee getting into foul trouble if Embiid starts in this game are ridiculously high. Like, I would never actually project somebody to foul out, but I think we'd have to get pretty close to it with Mason Plumlee if Joel Embiid's in there. So he would be pretty risky to me in terms of being a variance play with his playing time if Embiid is starting.
You almost have to try to foul out 4 games in a row. Like, you have to work at that. That doesn't happen accidentally.
No, I think he does it. He's doing it. He's out there. Last game he fouled, and not only that, but listen to the amount of minutes that he's fouled out in. Last game, which also was against the Sixers, he fouled out in 19 minutes. The game before against the Rockets, he fouled out in 20 minutes. So it's not even like this is a game where it's like, oh, Mason Plumlee's getting 30 minutes and fouling out. He's just coming out there, he's hacking dudes, picking up his paycheck and going home. Like he's not playing hefty workloads.
Looking here in the Awesemo chat, again, smash that like button, making the push toward 50 folks, nice and early, a few minutes into the show, obviously. So Shane says, Jeremy Cardio Grant, he's good. Then you have DJ say, we're not going to talk about Grant being destroyed by Simmons. So where are you landing on Jeremy Grant on this, both sides of that coin?
Yeah, he's about fairly priced. Earlier in the season, he was somebody who I definitely thought warranted a whole bunch of exposure, but now we're at a point where he's priced at 7,800 on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, he is a little over 8,000. If I remember correctly, he is 8,400. So just at that kind of price point, when, like I said, it's a 10-game slate, there's going to be a lot of options. There's going to be a lot of good value plays, and you have to look at the price tag of Jeremy Grant. And you have to ask yourself, is there value to that price tag? Like, unless you think that Jeremy Grant should be somebody who should be priced at, like 86 or 8,800, I just think he's fairly priced at this point.
Let's move on to Toronto and Indiana. Again, similar story. These two teams matching up for the second straight game. Before we even get to that, by the way, just in general with the way this front-loaded, super condensed schedule is working for the NBA and trying to anticipate all things pandemic. Naturally, we know there have been postponements, COVID cancellations, all of that, and players ruled out like you read about. It's really hard, obviously, to, fully anticipate things like health and safety protocols. But how do you like these mini series that we're experiencing? Does that help you, hurt you, or is that kind of irrelevant to you when it comes to lineup building?
Oh, it's pretty irrelevant. Like I don't really I don't spend a lot of time thinking like, the Pistons and the Sixers just played against each other. That's going to totally overhaul everything. It's just whoever the best plays on a points per dollar basis are the guys I want exposure to. And then just looking at general value, the same as we look at any other slate. Like we're about to talk about the Raptors here. Kyle Lowry's questionable. Pascal Siakam's questionable. If these guys are out, it opens up a lot of value, and it doesn't really matter how recently the Pistons or the Pacers and the Raptors have played each other.
All right. So as we look at Toronto, like you said, those two guys, questionable to play in this moment. Obviously, Lowry in a really good spot. Fred VanVleet, enters a huge spot if those two guys are both ruled out, or even one of them is ruled out. You also have Chris Boucher, as we like to look at him, or the Boosh. OG Anunoby is obviously always an interesting play. I don't know that you would necessarily view him as a good one here tonight, but again, it becomes a case of, all right, what value is appealing if one or two of those top players are ruled out? So is it just waiting until close to lock and getting an answer on these guys, or are there guys that are instantly appealing for you right now on that side?
Yeah, so I mean, if everybody plays, then I don't think there's a real need to target the Raptors. And by everybody, I just mean Kyle Lowry and Pascal Siakam.
Right.
If those guys are in, then I think we have a lot of fair pricing in a somewhat tough matchup against the Indiana Pacers. If Lowry's out, Fred VanVleet benefits the most. If Pascal Siakam's out, then I think Chris Boucher benefits the most. One thing about Boucher that was a little bit concerning is that in yesterday's game, even without Siakam in there, he only ended up playing 21 minutes. And that was even though he didn't get into foul trouble. I was thinking that eventually we would see Chris Boucher move into the starting lineup, but it kind of looks like they're starting to move away from him a little bit, which is a little bit of a concern for me, but still I'd be willing to roster him in GPPs if Pascal Siakam's out. Those are really the two primary guys that I'd be looking at here. Fred VanVleet if Lowry's out, and Chris Boucher if Pascal Siakam's out. If both of those guys are out, then both of them are in play. If both of them play, then probably a team I'm going to be passing on tonight.
All right. So if you look at the other side, then with Indiana, are you compelled? Maybe compelled isn't the right word when we consider how many options we have available on a 10-game slate, but are you tempted to play Sabonis, to play Brogdon? It feels like every single night you have to at least consider it.
No, I don't think you have to on a slate this big, fairly neutral matchup against the Raptors. It's not really the greatest spot in the world. And the other thing too is, so Sabonis was a really strong play for a long time, but now he's 9,600 on FanDuel, and his DraftKings price is up to 9,800. So the price has caught up with him. There was a long time this year where he was a guy who was priced 8,200, 8,400. Now the price is up, $1,500 on each site, and the pricing value is kind of gone there. I wouldn't say that it means you have to fade him, but at least in my initial builds, he's not somebody I'm getting to with any regularity in my lineups in terms of exposure. And the same goes for everybody else on Indiana. There's no other player that I'm really getting a mass amount of in my lineups. The other thing to consider here also is that we have Jeremy Lamb back, and Jeremy Lamb, who had missed the start of the season to this point with a torn ACL. Now he's back in the lineup, and we're kind of seeing his minutes, not to a point where I want to roster him, but the last three games, 19 minutes, 28 minutes, 19 minutes. The significance of him playing that many minutes is that, number one, he's a fairly high usage player, so that's going to take away some shots from other guys on the team. Then also with him being active again, now we're seeing a little bit less playing time go to Aaron Holiday, a little less playing time for Justin Holiday. Doug McDermott might not get quite as many minutes. So he has a little bit of an impact where he takes away value from other players on the team. And that just also makes them, from points per dollar and a projection standpoint, not really the best plays on the slate. So there's better teams to target than the Pacers tonight.
Hit that like button, folks, here on YouTube. And while you do, let me tell you quickly about our new show sponsor, that is No House Advantage, who has taken a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across, of course, the NBA, as well as MLB, NFL, and PGA, all for cash prizes, folks. Now, this exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform, levels the playing field, makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. Now, the best part is you can join for free today. You heard me right. Join for free today. Download the No House Advantage app. Check out the daily prop contest without having to deposit even a single dime. Totally free. You don't have to worry about that at all. And when you're ready to make your first deposit, NHA will match it with up to $20 in free play when you use promo code Awesemo. You know I was going to say that, right? Promo code Awesemo. Refer a friend to get $5 more after that first deposit and beat your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. So we're cruising through a 10-game slate. Get your questions in. It's obviously easiest for us and probably you if you keep them centralized to the game that we are talking about as opposed to, going all willy-nilly all over the place. That's okay. If you want to do that a little bit later on, we'll catch up, do our best anyway, and get your questions answered. I know some people talking a little bit about, Greg, the game that we are going to next, which is Charlotte-Orlando. I think just because people have been mystified by all things Gordon Hayward. Somebody said in the chat a little while ago, I don't play the guy. He puts up 50 points. I play the guy. He goes for 25. Second night of a back-to-back here. There are no injuries listed on the Charlotte side. Do you want to play Gordon Hayward again?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're rostering him when he goes for 25 fantasy points, then you probably didn't roster much recently. He has 2 games all season where he scored under 30 fantasy points, and basically every other game he's been right around 40. So Gordon Hayward's been great this year. I don't really think that's all that surprising. If you look at his numbers last year when he was with Kaufman Celtics, when Tatum, Brown, and Walker were off the court, the numbers for Gordon Hayward were ridiculous last year. He was averaging nearly 30 points. And then it was like 8 rebounds and 6 assists per 36 minutes, really high usage rate, and there was good efficiency numbers. So it stood to reason. As soon as he went to the Hornets, I thought there was a pretty good likelihood that he was going to be an all-star player as long as he stayed healthy. That looks like it's the case right now. I mean, Gordon Hayward, I think, has definitely established himself. He's an all-star caliber player. On FanDuel, I think he's appropriately priced at 8,100. But on DraftKings, 7,300 for Gordon Hayward, a guy who I've projected for right around 40 fantasy points right now. I think that he makes for a good play on DK, just a little bit too cheap. And I don't really understand why he's only 7,300. And then even looking at his salaries as of late, it's gone down. So last week he was 7,800. Then the last 2 games, he scored 50 fantasy points, went to 7,700, scored 57 fantasy points, went to 7,500. And now he's 7,300. So he keeps scoring over 50 fantasy points, but the price is going down in the opposite direction. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So Gordon Hayward is a guy who I think is worth getting exposure to on DK for sure.
Is that about it for you on the Charlotte side, though?
Yeah, the minutes in the backcourt have been really hard to parse. We've got LaMelo Ball, Devontae Graham, and Terry Rozier, all of them kind of splitting minutes. I feel like LaMelo Ball is the guy who should be playing the most and should be starting of that trio, but it hasn't really been the case. He's definitely the best fantasy producer overall and the best fantasy producer on a points per minute basis, but it's so hard to trust his playing time. When you look at recent games, yeah, he played 27 minutes against Orlando yesterday, but the game before that, he played 16 minutes. And the game before that, he played 23 minutes against the Raptors. So there's a lot of variance in his playing time, and he's still pretty expensive on both sides. So LaMelo Ball isn't really going to be somebody that I want to target. And then I haven't really rostered all that much of Devontae Graham or Terry Rozier this year anyway, unless there's somebody out that creates value. So really the only play that I see here as being a good one is Gordon Hayward, and that's DK specific.
On the projections on the Orlando side, again, from our own Alex Baker. So you got Nick Vucevic projected for right around 50 points. Aaron Gordon, provided he plays. Last look, I'm not so sure he was going to, but maybe you have an update on that. Provided he is in there, another guy who's positioned well to return some production right around 40 points. Both these guys 5X players in terms of value. And as you said, price per dollar, points per dollar. It's those two in particular. Obviously, you could look down. Cole Anthony is one. Maybe Birch, the center, is another one. But really, it's right there at the top for those two guys. How do you feel about them?
All right. So first, hitting on Gordon Hayward, he is probable to play. He missed
Aaron Gordon.
What did I say?
Gordon Hayward. One Gordon or another.
All right, whatever. Yeah,
Gordon.
Too much name overlap. Aaron Gordon, he is probable to play. So yeah, dealing with hip and back injury, he's expected to return to the lineup today. That's going to take away a little bit from Vucevic, but not really a big deal because Vucevic, I don't think, is appropriately priced on DK at 8,700. He's one of the guys who I'm getting the most exposure to in my initial lineup builds. Favorable matchup against not so great defensive Hornets front court. I think that he's somebody worth getting exposure to. On FanDuel at 9,400, I'm coming out with a little bit of Vucevic, but not nearly as much on DK, where he's 8,700, and we're also able to roster 2 centers. So another guy who's a little bit better of a play on DK than FanDuel, but viable for me on both sites. We have a pretty interesting situation in the backcourt because Michael Carter-Williams is questionable to play. He's been out since, let's see, when was the last time that Michael Carter-Williams played? He has not played since January 4th. And during the time he's been out, we've seen Cole Anthony start at point guard and generally play pretty big minutes because Markelle Fultz is also out for the season with a torn ACL. If Michael Carter-Williams is back, I don't really think he's going to be fantasy relevant himself, but we've seen some good games from Cole Anthony lately. And I think we're going to see Cole Anthony's playing time go down by a little bit if Michael Carter-Williams is in there just because there's somebody else to split ball handling duties with. So Cole Anthony, who I think is a viable play on FanDuel, if Michael Carter-Williams is out, is somebody who I won't have in my player pool if Michael Carter-Williams returns to the lineup.
So our pal Theo here in the chat says, not trusting anyone on the Magic. I've blacklisted the entire team, whereas Marcus says, what about Evan Fournier again?
So Evan Fournier, once again, somebody who I just think the price is about fair. And when we have a 10-game slate, it's not to say that you can't roster some of these guys who just have fair prices, because especially if you're like me and you're playing a bunch of lineups, some of them are going to make it into lineups, right? Because there's going to be a point where you're just building lineups. There's X amount of salary left over. Guys make it into the lineup. And a lot of those guys are fine. You don't necessarily have to avoid them. What I'm really trying to focus on right now, the players that I'm talking about, are the guys that I actually think are good plays that I want to actively be targeting. So if you have Evan Fournier in a lineup, yeah, I don't have an issue with that. It's fine to roster him, but he's not somebody who I'm going to be going out of my way and getting to, 15 to 20% of my lineups. He's somebody who probably makes it into like 3 or 4% or something like that. So individually, I don't really think he's a particularly strong play, and not somebody that I'm saying like, hey, you want to go roster Evan Fournier, because I don't really think of him quite that way. He's at 5,900 on FanDuel. Fournier on DraftKings is at, just bringing up his price really quick. It would help if I could spell his name. There we go. 6,300. Yeah. 6,300 on DraftKings. So it's just a fair price. There's no point where he's generally more expensive than that. Fournier, if we look at his price so far this year, the 6,300 right now is actually the most expensive he's been all season. So we have to ask ourselves going forward, is Fournier more likely to be more expensive or less expensive than this? The historical pricing would tell us he's more likely to see a decrease in price. And if we just think of players as stocks, right, we'd rather buy them when they're towards their bottom than when they're at their peak. So Evan Fournier, when we're seeing his price up right now, not somebody that we want to say like, oh, I really want Evan Fournier in a cash lineup, or somebody who I'm trying to fit into a significant amount of my lineups.
As you said, you expect Aaron Gordon out there. He's listed as probable, but David asks if for some reason Gordon doesn't go, Cole Anthony.
It doesn't matter because he's listed as probable, so I'm just assuming he plays. Like, I mean, we could do anything. We could just say like, hey, what happens if
Vooch is ruled out? Right?
Yeah, what happens if Vooch is ruled out? It's like, I don't know. I'm not considering that because it's not a likely scenario.
Fair enough. All right. I want to tell you quickly, folks, about Awesemo Plus. Now, if you are unfamiliar, and I can't imagine you are, if you're here watching this show on YouTube or, wherever, obviously, that you happen to find us on a daily basis. But if you are unfamiliar with Awesemo Plus, all the great tools and content for nearly every DFS sport that is available to you, you got to be. Awesemo Plus, just a weekly pass. That's it. Not even $30, $29.95. It includes full access to all the premium content and tools that Awesemo.com has to offer, including player projections, ownership projections, the premium Slack channel that I have referenced, so much more. A lot of the stuff that Greg is sitting here touting as well. A lot of the information that he is looking up, it comes directly from Awesemo Plus. If you're only looking to play NBA, it's okay. In fact, it's saver for you, I suppose. You can sign up now for our weekly NBA package. It is only $16.95. So just something to be mindful of. Look up, and if you are already a subscriber, familiar, and you're part of the Awesemo Plus premium Slack channel here, then go right ahead, leave us comments, questions, whatever it is for tonight's slate. 10 gamer, or if you're watching along on YouTube, you can leave them there as well. We are monitoring things. We'll let you know as we're about halfway through the show what is on your mind, see if we can get the best answers available from our own Greg Ehrenberg right here. Now, next game, you have got Miami and Brooklyn, and this should be a fun one, I think. And it's, I don't know, I guess just on the surface, let's assume, as you know, it's the case at the moment. So let's assume that the main three are out there, right? Harden and Durant and Irving. I don't think any of them have been ruled out to this point. So if they're all out there, what have you learned in these first couple games together that makes you feel one way or another as far as DFS and rostering these guys?
Yeah, I mean, the usage is going to be pretty spread out. I think that logically, that's what we would have expected to happen. Harden's usage is so much lower than I ever would have thought possible, though. So last 3 games for James Harden, 18% usage rate, 23%, and 20%. That's a ridiculously low number for Harden. Looking through his numbers from last year, I think he was below 30% like 3 times the entire season. And he's been under 30% now 3 games in a row. So it looks like his fantasy production is taking the biggest hit of the 3. But with that said, his FanDuel price is at $9,800. I can't ever remember seeing Harden priced this cheaply. So I'm still going to get exposure to him at that price. I understand that the production's down, the usage is way down, but I think the price maybe is overcorrected for it a little bit. So still worth getting exposure to him there. On DraftKings, I'm not going to play any of these 3 guys. I think the prices are all about accurate to a little bit too high. And then also, like I said, there's just a situation where I think the 3 of them, the production is going to be so spread amongst them that it's going to really cap their ceilings. And I just like Harden on FanDuel because of the price below 10K, and that shooting guard is generally a difficult position to fill tonight. But beyond that, I think it's going to be tough to trust them until at least we see a few more games of them playing with each other, and one to either see how it shakes out, or we get a situation, like the other day where it's, hey, Kevin Durant's resting, therefore we have extra usage for other guys, or it's Kyrie Irving's resting, therefore Harden and Durant become stronger plays. So until they work out the chemistry or maybe the pricing adjusts, it's not something I really want to target heavily.
Or Kyrie went AWOL. I mean, anything's possible. Doesn't even have to be resting.
Yeah, Kyrie. If Kyrie's away from the team, any situation that we could think of that takes one of them away from the team, it's a reason to rush them. Maybe, who knows? Maybe Kevin Durant decides he does not like the Brooklyn Nets jersey. He doesn't think he doesn't like the color pattern, right? And he says, you know what? I'm leaving the team until we change colors. I want Brooklyn Nets from now on. It has to be gold. We're only wearing gold color. Who knows, right? It's possible.
I mean, maybe these guys decide on the other side, as they saw the other night, that they just don't like those, hideous Miami Vice alternate uniforms that the Heat have, and they're, it's messing with their eyes being out there on the court. They don't want any part of it, and so they're going to sit, just go to not even come out of the locker room. That's another option.
Well, here's one thing that we're definitely seeing with the 3 of them playing together, and this will transition us to the Heat side. They don't like playing defense together because they're getting crushed on the defensive end of the game. So if you look at some of these Miami guys, I think there are good plays here, in particularly Bam Adebayo, because the biggest thing that we've seen the Nets struggle with is on the glass, which I don't think is all that surprising after they traded away Jared Allen. And all they're really left with in the front court is what's left of DeAndre Jordan, right? Whatever's left in his health bar is what they have left in DeAndre Jordan. That's all of their front court. And he's not a particularly good defensive player at this point in his career. When he comes off the court, they have absolutely nothing. So we've seen them in the game against like the Cavs the other day. They got out rebounded. The final margin was like 59-27. And so Bam Adebayo going up against the Nets, this is a ridiculously favorable matchup. We saw him really do well in the last game they played against each other.
41 points, real points.
Yeah, and surprisingly, with only 5 rebounds. That was crazy because I was really heavy on Bam in that spot, because I was like, Bam's going to pull down like 20 rebounds against the Nets. And instead he scores 41 points and doesn't get any rebounds. But either way, I think that any big man playing against the Nets is going to be a really favorable matchup. Eventually, we're going to see the Nets add a big man, whether it's somebody gets bought out and the Nets end up signing them, or maybe they're able to make a trade at the deadline. This isn't the roster the Nets are going to go into the playoffs with. I think that Andre Drummond is somebody who's pretty likely to end up on the Nets before the end of the season. But as it stands now, I think Bam Adebayo is definitely somebody who we're going to want to roster against the Nets. He's one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. We also have Jimmy Butler's out. Tyler Hero's still out. So Kendrick Nunn and Goran Dragic, both of them are in line for extra playing time. Both of them make for good targets as well. So those 3 players from the Heat on both sites, Adebayo, Dragic, Nunn, all 3 guys I'm going to be targeting today.
Yeah, I mean, I would think Goran Dragic obviously in a terrific spot. He's in fact almost 6x value based on Alex's Awesemo value projection for him. So we will see. I don't know if this is the Matt LaMarca that we both know and love that is hanging out in the YouTube chat, but if it is, hi. If it's not, hi. It says Miami Heat jerseys are straight fire. Couldn't disagree more. Those jerseys are awful.
if we're gonna say by straight fire, they literally have fire on them, right?
The only thing worse than those
what we're talking
jerseys
about?
is what they did to the court when they're wearing those jerseys. It's even more terrible.
Oh, yeah, tell me more about how you feel about these jerseys, Kaufman. You seem very passionate.
We have a half
them.
hour left. We're just going to dissect all things Miami Heat alternate Miami Vice jerseys.
Yeah, this is like Peter Griffin. You know what really grinds my gears, and then you just go in on the Heat jerseys for 20 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, so just absolutely terrible. Stay up to date with the latest NBA news, DFS news with our Awesemo NBA Twitter handle. If you are unfamiliar, you should give it a follow. It's a great one. Our guy News God, who has he's hanging out with us as he always does in the chat, as well as the Awesemo Premium Slack channel, has noted my haircut. Thank you very much, News God. Appreciate you. Says, let's see. He'll be delivering the latest news on injuries. It's amazing. He gets this news before anybody else, or right there the very second that everybody else does, and it comes right your way to help you set those lineups. I'm talking injuries, starting lineups, minutes limits, anything that you want to know from News God. He has got it. More daily news before lock. It's all out there. Give the Awesemo NBA Twitter handle a follow. Check out News God's Twitter handle as well. That is News, N-E-W-Z, God. I hope you know how to spell that, _DFS. And you can catch Ship My Money's deep dive article, which is free this season, and prepare for the slate. It's a must read if you are playing NBA DFS. I enjoy reading it thoroughly, read it all the time. I'm not just telling you that. It actually helps me set my lineup. So you should be mindful of that as well. Now, speaking of being mindful, as we make the push to the last half of these games, halfway through the program here, and hit that like, would you? Where are we sitting right now in the likes? 91. Give me a break. Get up over 100. Smash that like button. We greatly appreciate your support. We got LA, that is the Lakers, in Cleveland against those woeful Cavaliers who were just blown out by 38 by my beloved Boston Celtics. Now you got to deal with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. LeBron doing the coming home shtick here as he returns to Cleveland. What are you, let's start on the LA side here for this one, obviously. Who beyond the obvious stands out? I know LeBron does. I know Davis does. At least they typically do. You looking in any other direction?
No, and they also don't really particularly stand out to me in this matchup. So something else about this game, it has a total of 212.5 points. For just an example of how low that is, we have only 3 games on the slate with a total under 222. So, 212 it's just such a slow paced game relative to the other games on the slate. The other thing with the Lakers too, something I've said a bunch of times this year, but we have Montrezl Harrell and Dennis Schroeder now both on the Lakers. They have a much stronger and deeper roster this year. LeBron and AD, both of them are playing less minutes this year. Both of them also have lower usage rates this year compared to last year. So with all that in mind, Lakers double-digit favorites playing in a really slow-paced game in Cleveland. Cleveland also shockingly good defense this year. Last year, Cleveland had the worst defensive efficiency in all of the NBA. This year, one of the best defenses so far to this point. I don't necessarily buy into it being the case that they're actually one of the best defenses in the NBA, but still, we're looking at a team that's playing at a fairly slow pace and is also one of the best defenses on a points per possession basis. They're not a great team to target for DFS. So we also consider all these other situations with the Lakers in terms of them kind of trying to limit the workloads of LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I don't think their players really need to target. If this was a 3 or 4 game slate, I'd feel differently. We have so many high priced guys to play on this slate. We have Luka Doncic. We have Damian Lillard, like I mentioned before, is my favorite pay up target. Jokic is on the slate. There's so many other options. The Lakers guys just come in as way lower priorities for me than these other guys. So they're not players I see myself getting to all that much. Lakers, another team that I don't really think we need to target on this slate due to the game environment.
Our own Jordan says, LeBron revenge game? You think that stuff means anything to him with nobody in the stands?
What is he getting revenge for? Winning a championship? Like what does he hate Cleveland for? What is he getting after them about?
Hey, buy into the narrative, would you?
But what's even the narrative? He used to live here, and now he plays basketball here, so now he tries harder. Like, yeah, he tries hard the other games. Actually, I don't even buy into that, really. I think LeBron really coasts through the regular season for the most part at this point in his career, but still, I think it's a regular season game. LeBron is no use for the regular season at this point in his career. He'll be playing in March and April, and that's when we'll really turn the gas on. He doesn't care.
Still putting up those numbers.
Yeah, that's what he's doing. He's doing it. He's doing these. The game he played the other day against, who was he playing on national TV? I don't know, but he was. It was the game he played against Milwaukee. I'm not sure he even had to break a sweat in that game. He was pulling up from like 28 feet. He was just casual, like on offense. Hey, let's just heat check shot at one after another, and just very casually poured in like 60 fantasy points. But yeah, I don't think that there's going to be a real point in the regular season where LeBron feels like he really needs to step on the gas and really, try to crush other teams, especially when we consider the schedule, right? LeBron's such a smart player at this point in his career. He knows there's a lot of back-to-backs on the schedule. Mm-hmm. He's playing 3-4 games in a week. He has the big picture in mind. I don't think there's going to be a lot of games where we see LeBron, with like a 36% usage rate and playing 38 minutes or something like that. They're gonna save him for the playoffs. And the bigger point here is the Lakers. I don't really see them extending their stars very often in the regular season. So there are going to be games where I think we want to roster LeBron James and Anthony Davis, but it's going to be far less than it's been in previous seasons.
Our man Emax says, birthday boy Kaufman showing residual anger toward the Heat as a Celtics fan. Ray Allen flashbacks. Am I right, Greg? I'm definitely.
Is it your birthday?
It is in a few days, actually, but it's also just my birthday every single day in the YouTube chat. I've come to find that's been going on for months. But reality, real birthday in a few days. What'd you get me? Or I guess you haven't done any shopping yet, which is selfish.
Well, happy birthday! By the way, you get to spend time with me. Like, do you need anything else? You're doing just fine, buddy.
Yeah, this is this is what you dream about when you wake up. This is it right here. Yeah. Like, can I talk hoops with Greg for an hour today? Oh God, what better way to start the day? I'm in. Adrian says Kaufman is dead to me. LOL. Who did I crap on? Probably somebody. Maybe those Miami jerseys, because people are still writing about that in the Awesemo channel. Going back to this game for a second, just again, Lakers and Cavs. I mean, is there, after LeBron and AD, and that's to say, again, that these guys even stand out to you at all, which, you're not enamored with either one of them. Is there anybody else in this game, either side of the ball, that you're interested in playing?
Not really. I mean, I hit on the Lakers side. It takes on a slate of this size, and especially the Lakers in particular, it's going to take somebody being out. And who knows, maybe this is the time LeBron James will be ruled out. He's been listed as questionable every single game so far this season. I generally think that just means nothing, but yeah, eventually he's probably going to get ruled out, right? They wouldn't be listing him as questionable if they weren't planning on arresting him at some point. But as long as he plays, no real interest. From the Cavs side of the game, then it's a really tough matchup against the Lakers. We also have this team finally getting healthy again. So we've got the Sexland backcourt back in action. Colin Sexton, Darius Garland both starting. With both of them now back in the starting unit, they're going to be taking away a little bit of usage away from each other. And then the front court, we've got the Andre Drummond and Jared Allen situation where these guys are basically in a timeshare, splitting the minutes, and both of them still relatively expensive. So until one of them gets hurt, traded, or something different happens with the roster, it's going to be difficult for me to want to play either of them for DFS.
Chad says Adam needs some DVDs for his birthday, which I think is evident looking behind me. Adam, my birthday's Wednesday, says Curtis. Hey, happy birthday, Curtis. Steven says, Koff, do you think Greg was shopping for you yesterday? Obviously, he was getting the furniture for you. Some IKEA. Are you going to at least build it before you deliver it?
No, I've gotten a lot of my furniture at Costco so far. And I got a U-Haul the other day and loaded a bunch of it up there. But nice. They have everything at Costco, which this was a big difference to me from being in my 20s to now being 30 years old. I love Costco. Right. I think it's a real coming of age type thing where it's I just want to spend my time at Costco. They have everything there. It's why do I even go anywhere else?
I just want to shop in bulk.
Yeah. It's like,
I'm in.
Yeah. Why do I want to go anywhere other than when I could get, 3 years supplies of toilet paper for $18.99, right? Why would I want to do anything else with my weekends? They have furniture there. They've got mattresses. They've got food. Costco is everything. It's incredible.
Listen, man, you maybe kind of sort of joke. I'm sure there's a hint of truth there. 15 feet from me, I'm not kidding. My wife has purchased enough tissue boxes that we will not need tissues in this house for a solid year.
No, it's the best.
It's unbelievable. Best. I mean, what are you going to do? It's madness. Jordan says Costco's better than everything. Is Costco sponsoring this show yet? Can we get them on the line? Can we call their marketing department? Just send them this clip. Next game, Denver and Dallas. Now, obviously, a couple of the studs here tonight that we were talking about off the top of the show, whether it's Nick Jokic, Luka Doncic. Some people were asking in the chat earlier, is it a Luka night versus Damian Lillard? I know you were higher on Dame, but let's start at the top with those two guys before getting to value. How do you feel about them? And I don't know, is there any extra narrative to them going head to head as well, trying to just, prove their worth against one another?
No, not really. I will say that from a fantasy standpoint, my preferred option is Luka Doncic. If I'm going up to the high end, overall, my favorite guy to pay up for on the slate is Damian Lillard. He's my number one priority, the guy that I want to get to the most. But I'm going to have some exposure to Luka. I'm going to have some exposure to Jokic, though I do slightly prefer the salary savings that Luka offers. He is $10,700 on FanDuel, which is $500 cheaper than Jokic. On DK, it's only $100 less expensive. However, there's so much more utility to somebody being guard eligible as opposed to center eligible. There's always so much value at the center position that just because of the positional scarcity, Luka becomes a higher priority play for me on DK over Jokic. So definitely two guys I'm going to have in my player pool. We've talked about guys to pay up for so far. And one of the reasons I also said when we got to guys like LeBron and AD, and I said I don't really have all that much interest in them, it's because there's other guys that I've projected higher than them in the high range, and Luka and Jokic are two of the guys that stand out. So those are the three guys on the high end that I really like. We'll talk about Dame later, but Dame, Luka, Jokic, and then nobody else that I'm paying up for that I'm going to be like overweight to the field. At least I don't think so at this point in the day.
What about paying down? And it's not a super value situation for either one of them, just kind of more of a mid-tier, I suppose, or a little bit lower end, but like Tim Hardaway Jr., Jalen Brunson, guys like that on the Dallas side, they are projected for 5x value, but is either one of them appealing given the other value that either already exists or that you're anticipating throughout the day?
No, not really. So Dallas is still dealing with some players who are out: Maxi Kleber, Dwight Powell, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Josh Richardson on the health and safety protocols. But with that said, also Kristaps Porzingis missed last game due to rest, and he's coming back. And we've seen some of these other guys get priced up because of a little bit of a reaction from the pricing algorithm with Porzingis being out last game. So now with where the prices are at, like Jalen Brunson was a really good value for a little bit, but he's no longer somebody who's priced below 4K like he was before. Jalen Brunson is now up to what is his price on FanDuel? So he's 4,300 on FanDuel. That's viable, but not nearly as strong as when he was a guy who was 3,900. And then also now that we have Porzingis back, taking a little bit of usage away from the starting lineup, there's nobody on Dallas to me who's really a high priority play other than Luka. And even like Luka, like I said, Damian Lillard, somebody who I'm a little more apt to pay up for. But other than that, not really a whole lot that I like in this game as a whole. Another spot where just not all that much pricing value. The other thing too, with the Nuggets side of the game, Michael Porter Jr. is back with the team after he was in the health and safety protocol, and he's also a pretty high usage guy. So him being back in the mix, that's going to be taking away some playing time from guys. It's going to be taking away some shots from the other core players in the starting lineup. So Dallas, Denver, none of them am I really looking at any of the cheaper guys for value.
Mark says, I got you guys. I work at Costco. See, there you go.
There we go.
You're all set.
I hope he's the CEO.
Big discount coming your way, obviously. You heard it here first from Mark. All right, let's move into the 9 o'clock Eastern games. You got the Celtics in Chicago, fresh off that nearly 40-point victory over the Cavs yesterday, where I guess fresh legs tonight for Boston because guys didn't have to play too much. In fact, you had Jaylen Brown go for 33 points in 19 minutes, something that had never been done in NBA history. But his production tonight, Greg, may not be what it was last night because while Kemba Walker's not playing on the back-to-back, he's coming off a good game. Jason Tatum, after a 5-game absence, is expected to be back. So what's your approach to this one first on the Boston side?
By the way, it's so funny that Jason Tatum only missed 5 games because he missed like a month. But the Celtics,
because they had 3 postponed even before they got back to work.
Yeah, it's funny.
You're right. They haven't played, or he hasn't played in 2.5 weeks.
He hasn't played. I think it was January 8th was his last game or something like that. But yeah, it was funny because Tatum had been out for like 10 days and hadn't missed a single game at that point. There had just been so many games that were postponed. But yeah, I agree with what you said there. So Jaylen Brown, he's been great recently. And now his price is up. But with Jason Tatum there, right, we have to expect that he's going to see a little bit of a step back in usage. I understand Kemba's out, but Kemba also hasn't quite been himself so far this year. And he's also playing reduced minutes to this point. So I think we have to expect that going forward right now and with Tatum back in the lineup, there's going to be a little bit less shots going towards Jaylen Brown. He looks a little bit overpriced to me. As for Tatum himself, I don't really want to roster him in his first game back. We don't know what his conditioning is going to be like in general across all sports, in basketball, football. Coming back from COVID, it's kind of been a hit or miss situation. Some guys have looked exactly the same coming back. Some guys have come back and their conditioning hasn't been up to par. Maybe they actually got sick while they were away and they're still feeling a little bit of the ill effects of it and just in terms of how well they're able to perform. So I generally don't really like to roster players right when they're coming back from that kind of long layoff from COVID. So Tatum, not somebody I'm going to be looking to roster, but we'll definitely be keeping an eye and see just how he looks physically. How does he look on the court? What does his playing time look like? What does his usage look like as he gets back into the mix? And then maybe somebody I'd be willing to roster in the Celtics next game. But first game back, I'm not really going to be looking at him.
Price is pretty high too. I mean, I know Alex hasn't projected, for 5x value, but he's still up there for a guy that hasn't played in so long.
Yeah, so he is priced at 8,900 on DK. And even on a slate this big, if he scores 45 fantasy points, that's fine, but that's not going to be enough to win you a GPP or anything like that when there's so many good high-priced options. So Tatum, I think it's fine to fade him for today, wait and see how he looks, and then approach it going forward. Because the other thing too is, let's say that he plays close to a normal workload, and let's say that he plays 32, 33 minutes. That's not a terrible amount of minutes, but it's still a few minutes less than what he's usually playing. And as somebody who scores, like 1.3 fantasy points per minute, if you're taking away 3-4 minutes from Jason Tatum, we're talking about 5 less fantasy points. And that's a pretty big deal when somebody's that expensive. So I don't really see the value there to want to roster him.
With Kemba out and Peyton Pritchard hurt, do you like Marcus Smart or Jeff Teague?
So Jeff Teague is somebody I'm getting a little bit of exposure to on my initial builds. Also somebody who's a little hard to figure out just from the standpoint of there's been times where it looks like he was going to play significant minutes and then just didn't. There's other spots where he just kind of randomly played a decent amount of minutes when I wasn't expecting it. But I think that Teague, not a priority play for me, except is somebody who it looks like I'm going to be getting to with some regularity in my initial build of lineup. So he'll be in the player pool and is somebody that I'm probably going to be. Let me see what his ownership projects as right now. With him only project for 4.5% ownership on FanDuel, and then on DraftKings right now, he is projected for also sub 10% ownership. He's somebody I'm probably going to be about double the field on. I'm probably going to be around 10%, which is definitely more than the field is getting to him.
Chicago side of things, again, home game, obviously, for the Bulls. Naturally, you have Zach LaVine, Lauri Markkanen. You could, they're both projected for good games. You could pay way down. Look to a guy like Dan Gafford, the center, who's projected at about 5.5x value, right around 17, 18 points. How do you feel about these guys?
Yeah, so we do have some injury news here from the Bulls side of the game. Wendell Carter Jr. is expected to miss another game. He's dealing with a quad injury. He's missed the last couple of games. Looks like he's going to be out for another week or two. Gafford's been starting in his place, but not playing enough minutes to the point where I actually want to go out and roster him. Gafford in the last 2 games played 18 and 19 minutes as a starter. So it's nice that he starts, but it doesn't matter if the playing time isn't there. So not someone it's worth getting exposure to. Player that I do like, though, is Lauri Markkanen. He's also picking up at least a little bit of extra playing time without Wendell Carter Jr. in there. He played 36 minutes last game. That was a season high for him. And that was despite the game being a blowout. He didn't get his final rotation of the game. They lost to the Lakers by double digits. And even though the final score was only 11, the Bulls were trailing by 30 points at halftime. I think it was 63-33 at the half. And then the game only got close because the Bulls backups made it somewhat close in the fourth quarter, but never to the point where starters had to come back into the game. So the 36 minutes from Lauri Markkanen could have been a higher number. We could have seen him push for close to 40 minutes. So considering that, with Wendell Carter Jr. still out, I think Markkanen is a primary target for me on both DK and FanDuel. One of the guys who I got the most exposure to as a forward on both sites in my initial builds.
About 600 people watching here on YouTube. Smash that like button. Let's have one big push to 200 likes for this show. Would greatly appreciate it. And while we've got you here, want to tell you that it's okay if, in fact, you can't watch every single show here on the Awesemo YouTube channel because, of course, Awesemo has a podcast network. Almost every single Awesemo YouTube show available through the Awesemo Podcast Network. Podcast for every sport, and we're available on every major platform as well. Head on over to awesemo.com/podcast. Check out the latest. Once you're there, drop a 5-star rating and review. It is greatly appreciated. And you could use your Twitter handle or Awesemo username. Include that. Get a free week, potentially, of Awesemo Plus. We're going to give away a free Awesemo Plus pass every single week to the person who submits our favorite review. We are judging this thing with a fine-tooth comb. Well, really not that closely at all, but close enough that we are looking to reward you. So go ahead, leave a review, leave a 5-star rating. We appreciate it, and good luck to you. Greg, we got about 10 minutes left. We got a few games still to work with here, so let's move on. San Antonio at Nolans, and these two teams, well, New Orleans in particular is underachieved. Although, I mean, I guess you got the Zion side of things, so he's still fun to watch. But DFS wise, let's see. For New Orleans first, there's Brandon Ingram, who is always a compelling play. Steven Adams is interesting, projected for right around 30 points by Alex Baker. But other than that, that's kind of it. I mean, it's basically DeJounte Murray on one side and those two guys on the other.
Yeah, Pelicans. I don't really have a burning need to roster them on this slate. We've got everybody back now. We've got Lonzo Ball now, no really longer seeing to be playing with a minutes restriction, but still, it's a backcourt. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, he's carved out a role for himself, and with Eric Bledsoe there also, it's been pretty tough to predict the minutes there as of late. So with everybody healthy, not a team that I really think we need to target in the backcourt. I do have some interest in Steven Adams on FanDuel. His price has come all the way down to 5,000. And his production's been really inconsistent as of late. If we look at the last handful of games, 13 fantasy points, 34, that's nice. 20, not so nice. 32, that's nice. Then 8. So anyway, he's been all over the place. If you look at the box score in Fantasy Crunch, it looks like a Christmas tree because it's red, bad game, green, good game, red, bad game, green, good game. But that kind of inconsistency has also led to a really depressed price tag. So at 5,000 on FanDuel, Steven Adams is somebody that I'm going to have in my player pool. Right now, he's actually projected to be the chalkiest center on the FanDuel slate, which really makes sense to me when looking at what his price is, because that is too cheap for Steven Adams. In general, he's played pretty well alongside Zion this year, so he's worth getting exposure to there. But the other guys, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, no real pricing value there for me with all these other guys healthy. So a team that outside of Steven Adams, not all that much interest.
Minnesota and Golden State as you get to the later evening games, obviously.
One sec on the Spurs. Yeah. One thing I want to bring up: DeJounte Murray is too cheap on DraftKings. Something that producer Jordan said before the show started when I was talking to him. He won his points league fantasy matchup this week because DeJounte Murray had a triple-double yesterday. Jordan fist pumping in the back. He's very excited.
Gorgeous.
Which is true. DeJounte Murray had a triple-double yesterday. Inexplicably, his price dropped from 7,000 to 6,500 after the triple-double. And the 6,500 price point is the cheapest that he has had since December 30th, a matchup against the Lakers. So he's a guy who basically for all of 2021, he's been in the 7,000 to 8,000 price range. And then he puts up a triple-double and his price gets totally nerfed. So that doesn't make all that much sense. He's too cheap on DK. So DeJounte Murray, he's somebody that's worth getting exposure to on DraftKings. He's appropriately priced on FanDuel, not on DK.
DeMar DeRozan interest or just Murray?
Just Murray. I think that Murray, who is about a comparable fantasy producer this year to DeMar DeRozan, because of the way that he's picking up counting stats. DeMar DeRozan's pretty reliant on points. I know his assist rate is higher this year and last year than it has been in the past, but in general, he's a guy that relies on making shots and mid-range shots to put up his fantasy value. DeJounte Murray does it in a number of other ways, and considering the price difference, like comparing them on DraftKings, DeJounte Murray is 6,500 and DeMar DeRozan is at DeRozan was closer to 8,000 if I remember correctly. Right. Yeah, 7,700. So you're comparing two guys who are putting up comparable fantasy production this year, but one of them 6,500, one of them 7,700. DeJounte Murray is going to be somebody who I'm going to get to a decent amount on DK.
Minnesota and Golden State. There's some good pricing here in this one, at least in terms of, again, points per dollar in terms of the value. Some good options, both sides. Let's start with Minnesota here. And, maybe D'Angelo Russell is not as appealing there at the top, but you could look at certainly Malik Beasley is right there, an appealing option. You pay down. You got Jared Vanderbilt, who's been playing pretty well of late. You go way down, Jaden McDaniels. So is it these value guys potentially on that Timberwolves side you want to sprinkle in?
Well, we need to get an update on D'Angelo Russell because he's dealing with a quad injury. He's listed as questionable to play. If he's in, then I still think guys like Jared Vanderbilt and Malik Beasley would be okay options. However, if D'Angelo Russell's out, then we have a ton of value on Minnesota because then we're getting a spell. Ricky Rubio is probably going to have to play a significant amount of minutes at point guard. He is somebody who also coming back from COVID himself has played some limited minutes, but I think we're going to start to see that pick up a little bit. We saw in the last 2 games since coming back. He played 15 minutes 2 games ago, played 29 minutes last game. So with that considered, with no D'Angelo Russell, assuming D'Angelo Russell was to sit out, we'd probably see somewhere in the neighborhood of 32, 33 minutes from Ricky Rubio. That would make him a really strong play. Malik Beasley would see increased usage. Jared Vanderbilt, who's just been a monster in terms of picking up defensive stats, he's somebody who would also be a pretty good value play. Jared Vanderbilt over the last handful of games, 2 steals and a block, 2 steals and a block and a steal, 3 steals and a block. Those are his defensive numbers since moving into the starting lineup. As long as Karl-Anthony Towns is out, he's somebody who's going to have to play big minutes, and it looks like he's somebody who's going to pick up defensive stats whenever he's filling those minutes. So we need to keep an eye on D'Angelo Russell news. If he's out, then Minnesota becomes one of the top teams to target from a value perspective on the entire slate. Not just because there's that extra usage available, but also because on the Warriors side, which we're about to talk about, the Warriors are playing at a fast pace this year. They don't have a great defense, so they've definitely been a good team to pick on for fantasy production.
All right, let's go with the Warriors side since you talked about it, obviously. Now, Steph Curry, Steph is Steph. He's projected for right around 50 fantasy points. He's always a threat to go for 70, who knows? But there's also Andrew Wiggins, there's Kelly Oubre, there's Draymond Green. All these guys are in really solid spots. Those are the ones that's really the top of the heap that stands out, obviously, on the Warriors side. So which of that group, if any, do you want to roster?
Yeah, definitely a game that I have interest in. 227 total, one of the higher totals on the slate. There's only 3 games, I think, with higher numbers. From the Warriors side, I'm going to have Steph Curry in my player pool. The only thing is I have more interest in Luka Doncic and Damian Lillard. So Steph not as quite of a priority play as those guys. So he'll be in there, but not as regularly as those other superstars. Draymond Green, I still think he's worth getting exposure to, priced well below 6,000. He has really struggled as of late. One of the games was just total nonsense fluke where he just got ejected for absolutely nothing. And he was actually playing well before he got tossed from that game. But still, the decreased price for Draymond Green, it does look like he's certainly past his prime a little bit. And the defensive numbers in particular are not quite what they used to be. But still, 5,200 for Draymond Green on DraftKings, 5,100 on FanDuel. Somebody who I've projected for pretty close to 30 fantasy points. He makes for a good value play. Somebody who I'm going to be overweight to the field on both sites. And then Kelly Oubre, not somebody I'm really getting to on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, I do think that he makes for a better play there. Something that's good about Oubre is so the 5,200 price tag on FanDuel. Earlier in the season, we saw him close out games for the Warriors, and then he was really struggling to hit shots. So he got taken out of the closing lineup for Golden State. But now that his shooting's picked up a little bit, last game notwithstanding, where he only scored 7 fantasy points against the Jazz, we've seen him shoot the ball a little bit better over the last couple of weeks. He's regained his spot in the closing lineup, and that's helped Kelly Oubre's playing time. So in general, in competitive games, we've seen Oubre play over 30 minutes. And at his current price point on FanDuel, that makes him one of the better small forward options.
All right, last game for us before we get out of here. A couple minutes left in the hour, and that is Oklahoma City and Portland. And again, top of the heap. I know you're a big Damian Lillard guy tonight, so he is, probably someone you want to focus in on. You could pay way down. Not saying you're going to get the same production, but shy guy right there for OKC. And then after that, it really becomes kind of a value situation. Enes Kanter you can include in as well as kind of a mid-tier guy. But there's a lot of good pay down options in this game, both sides.
Yeah, so from the OKC side, I think Isaiah Roby is still viable. We have Al Horford still isn't back with the team. I'm not really exactly sure what that situation is. He's just away from the team for personal reasons. That's all we know right now. As long as he's out, I think Darius Bazley and Isaiah Roby stand to gain extra minutes. Roby has been the better fantasy producer of the two as of late, and his price oddly hasn't changed all that much. So considering what we've seen from Roby in the starting lineup, he's somebody to target on both sites. Darius Bazley, also somebody in line for extra minutes. His price is way down on FanDuel and DraftKings. I think that he's worth getting exposure to. I'm not quite getting to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander tonight. I've been on him on just about every single slate so far this year, but just other guys, higher priority plays for me on the high end. SGA, if you are going to roster him, he looks a little bit better on FanDuel than he does on DK. On the Portland side of the game, it's Damian Lillard is going to be one of my highest owned players today. Nobody else from Portland do I really like all that much, but Dame, core play for me, and somebody who I think if you're playing cash games, Lillard should be the first guy you put into that lineup, and then you build around him because he is the guy who I think should have the best overall fantasy game tonight.
Anything left to add before we get out of here?
No, I hit the mark right at 11 o'clock. I timed it out perfectly in my head. I was like, hey, I'm going to hit on Dame Lillard right at 11 a.m. And then you could do the outro. You could close up whatever loose ends we need to tie up. Jordan will hit that music, and then we go on about our day.
Sounds perfect. All right, 10-game slate tonight that we told you all about. And if you missed any of the show, go back, relive it on YouTube because it doesn't go anywhere. So we invite you to do that. Smash the like on your way out the door as well. It is greatly appreciated. And sign up for those notifications when you subscribe to the Awesemo YouTube channel as well. So later on today, you got the PGA DFS first look, the NBA deeper dive, the NBA live before lock, NBA late slate show, that new program. There's a lot going on here on the Awesemo channel. You do not want to miss it. We want to thank, of course, News God, EMAC, everybody hanging out in the chat naturally and keeping this show lively as always, whether in the Awesemo Premium Slack channel or on YouTube. Of course, our dude Jordan producing and keeping us in check. Greg Ehrenberg, Tinder Lake, fresh off shopping at Costco. He's going to now, I don't know, probably go shop at Costco. I'm Adam Kaufman, back with you on Thursday. Greg's back with you all day, every single day, 6 days a week, I guess I should say, because they don't let him work every day. Thanks, buddy.
See you, Kaufman.